If you've got OCD, you'll know this moment really well. The urge hits to check, to analyze, to fix, or to get certainty, and it feels so urgent. Not just dramatic, but very, very urgent. And the mistake most people make in that moment is thinking the urge means something important, that it needs dealing with right now, that this is the moment to solve it. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Strong urges don't mean you're failing. They usually mean you're doing something right. In this episode, I'm going to show you what strong OCD urges actually are and why trying to get rid of them backfires, and what to do instead in a way that doesn't rely on willpower, distraction, or trying to calm yourself down. If you've ever thought, I know what I'm supposed to do, but the urge feels too strong, then this episode is for you. We've all been there with OCD. You think you're finally getting better. You're practicing techniques, you're allowing a bit more uncertainty, you're feeling a bit more freedom. And then boom, out of nowhere, a new obsession, something very, very urgent. It just suddenly pops up into your consciousness and it wants to grab hold of you. It really wants that attention. And it's, dramatic. It's very, very uncomfortable. We feel the anxiety in the body. This is what happens when we get very urgent urges. We kind of tell ourselves, I have to think about this right now. If I don't, something awful is going to happen. The anxiety is going to get out of control, or, I'm going to lose control in some way, or something terrible might happen in the future. And this catastrophizing is exactly the kind of thing that keeps us stuck. But rather than being something bad, actually having a strong urge might actually be a sign that you're beginning to do things right. When we do actually begin to start pushing OCD to one side, when we start taking back control, OCD does not like that at all. It really wants to grab hold of your attention again. And, it will do that in any way that it can. The reality is that, OCD is a habit. Perhaps you've been doing it for a very, very long time. It's there in your nervous system. And so, when you start to do things differently, when you start tolerating anxiety a bit more or practicing acceptance, when you start taking back a bit more control from the OCD, typically it does not like that in any way, and it will start to kind of throw the toys out of the buggy, and it will try all sorts of things to get your attention. It will scream, it will shout, it will dance. And this is what OCD kind of urges are. So what can you do when you find yourself experiencing these really horrible and strong urges with OCD? Well, I think the first thing to point out is that we need to create a bit of space. When we're experiencing strong urges, it's very uncomfortable and we want to fight with them. We want to push them away. We want to push them down. But of course, all of that pushing away is the thing that is making them rebound back even harder. And so we don't want to do that. The way out of that trap is actually to learn how to feel what's going on a bit more. OCD hates it when you actually begin to allow it in a little bit. What's really at the heart of OCD is not allowing those difficult emotions. We fight with them. We try to have certainty all the time. We try to reassure ourselves all the time. That is really just, using compulsions in order to try to feel better in the short term, to get rid of uncomfortable emotions that we tell ourselves that we can't deal with. But the reality is that we're all much, much stronger than we think we are, that we can tolerate difficult emotions like uncertainty, doubt, shame, anxiety, fear. All of these things are, very difficult to deal with. They all have a certain kind of signature. If you can learn when you are very anxious, when the urges are very high, to rather than distract yourself, to sometimes just check in with yourself, to feel what is going on in the body. For me, I can often feel the anxiety in the stomach, sometimes in the chest. Sometimes it's in the shoulders, or a kind of, a mix of all three. And just rolling my shoulders sometimes like this can be very helpful. Or taking a slow, deep breath in And then breathing out slowly and feeling the body a bit more, checking in with that feeling in the stomach, checking in with the feeling in the chest. If we just immediately try to fight with these things and get rid of them, we're not learning anything from them. Actually, by paying attention to that certain signature of that feeling and learning how to experience it on your own terms, rather than constantly trying to push it away every time that it comes up, you're learning that you can deal with those things, that you're stronger than the OCD. You can feel anxiety in the body, and you can choose to take actions and steps that align with your values and your goals in your life, rather than trying to push away things that you don't like. And that leads into tip number 2, which is really learning how to redirect your attention towards more helpful things. Now, a lot of people ask me, hey, isn't that just kind of distraction? Isn't that a bad thing to do, to just distract yourself from your anxiety? And I see what they mean, but it's really important to recognize here that what we want to do is to put our attention and our focus onto our values and our goals. OCD, it just wants to steal your attention. It wants you to think about the thoughts. It wants you to get lost in rumination. And so, if we just try to sit there and do nothing at all, not think about the OCD, we might tell ourselves, right, for the next 5 minutes, no matter what happens, I'm not going to ruminate. I'm not going to ruminate at all. And we know what happens in that situation. It's so annoying and infuriating, but we find ourselves ruminating because, if we don't do anything, if we just sit there, it's just so easy for the OCD to just come in and distract you and get you thinking about it again, trying to problem solve it, trying to ruminate it, trying to get yourself out of the trap using analytical thinking skills, which just gets us more stuck. So what can we do instead in that situation? Well, if you think of your attention like a spotlight, you're going to try to hold that spotlight up and shine it on the things in your life that you really care about, the things that are really important to you in any given situation, even if you're just at work, or you're with your friends or you're with your family. Those things are always better things to focus on than trying to figure out the OCD. And this is an unhealthy distraction. This is positive distraction. You need to put your attention somewhere. You can't just sit and focus on the anxiety, for example, like the first tip, for the whole day. You might do that for a minute or 2 or 5 minutes, or if you have a bit longer and you want to do a 10-minute meditation on it, fantastic. But obviously, that's not practical to do the rest of the time. So you're going to need to find a way to focus your attention, elsewhere, outside of yourself, outside of trying to fix yourself or problem solve yourself, and come back into the present moment. The present moment is the best place to be. So that can be very helpful as well. And tip 3 is something a little bit different. I think sometimes if you find it impossible, if you're really finding those urges too strong, if the anxiety is too high, then we need to do something else altogether. And what that involves is actually trying to change your state. When we're activated in this way, what's going on is in the body, your sympathetic nervous system has been activated, your fight or flight system. Often that means the body is actually flooded with stress hormones in the blood. Cortisol, adrenaline are things that are pumped out into the blood when the sympathetic nervous system is activated. And, those things actually make our thoughts seem even louder, even more catastrophic. It makes it much easier for us to kind of get tunnel vision on our problems. And so, that's why changing your state can be really important here. For me personally, what really helps with this is exercise. If I actually move my body in some way, I get out for a run, I go to the gym, or even just do 10 minutes of, or 5 minutes of some exercises at home. It's something that really helps me to feel better. It gets the blood pumping, processing those stress hormones a little bit. When we exercise, it releases feel-good hormones like endorphins in the body. dopamine. And, it does change our state. It does help us to feel a bit better, and we're also focusing on something else for a while rather than trying to problem solve that thing. So if you exercise already, that can be great. If you don't exercise yet, start slowly, but it can be something that's really, really beneficial, even if it's just going out for a walk and focusing your attention mindfully on what is going on around you rather than being so fixated on the thoughts in your head. And finally, this is something that I practice a lot myself, is cold exposure, which when practiced responsibly and safely, it can be a very helpful tool, again, for changing your state. And to make it simple, something that I practice is just cold showers. If you're finding yourself really getting caught up in stuff, you can just have a 30-second cold shower. You can start with warm and then turn it to cold for the last 30 seconds. And what this does is basically it allows you to practice acceptance, and it also changes your state. When we experience cold, we also get a rush of dopamine afterwards. It can really give you a bit of a shock, but then afterwards, often you do feel a bit better, a bit more clearer. It can be a little bit easier to let go of certain thoughts. You've done something completely different. And also, if you can couple, having that cold shower with really feeling what's going on, experience that cold, practice acceptance whilst you're doing it, and, breathe deeply and very slowly in through the nose and out through the mouth, you can really have a very helpful experience that allows you to practice acceptance, change your state, and feel a bit better about yourself and about the overall situation. Really, when we have strong urges, it's all about zooming out, not focusing so narrowly on the problem itself, but feeling the emotions a little bit, learning to refocus our attention where we want it to be, and if necessary, trying to change your state a little. And if you don't have time to do cold exposure or going out for a run, make it as simple as possible. Just do some press-ups or some chin-ups or some sit-ups or whatever. Go out for a walk, get some sun on your face. Splash some kind of cold water on your face even. These simple little tips, can really help you when you find yourself being overwhelmed, by your thoughts, by your fears, and by those, very strong urges. And if you are struggling with OCD and anxiety, I do have a 12-week program that I've built from my own personal experiences of dealing with OCD. It includes weekly one-to-one coaching sessions. There's videos, there's optional group sessions. There's a whole online community that you can join. There's worksheets, there's meditations, all sorts of things to help you to overcome OCD and anxiety. If you're interested in applying for that, you can by heading over to my website, robertjamescoaching.com. Many thanks, and I'll see you next time. This video is for education only. It's not therapy or medical advice. If you're struggling, please speak with a licensed mental health professional.